Hi, my name is Jamin Rowan. I'm in the Department of English, and I've been kind of misplaced categorically speaking. I was teaching during the learning section earlier today, so they stuck me under campus innovations. But I'm going to be talking about the ways in which I use digital dialogue in my classroom. I really love digital dialogue, and one of the things that I realized about the time that digital dialogue came out was that one of the ways that I was failing in my job, I thought as a teacher, was that I just wasn't giving my students enough feedback. I felt like I was always being disappointed by their performance on, say, papers or the other things that I asked them to do at the end of the semester or in the middle of the semester. And so I thought, well, why is that? Why are my students not doing the kind of work, the quality of work that I want them to do? And it was because I had been thinking of my classroom as a mechanism for delivering content to them, and I realized instead that I needed to think about my classroom as a mechanism for giving them feedback. If I really wanted them to do the kinds of things and do well at the kinds of things that I asked them to do, they needed more feedback from me. So digital dialogue has really helped me think about how I give my students feedback. They're going to need feedback to do well on those skills that I wanted them to develop. So for me, the primary skills that I'm interested in developing are writing skills and critical thinking skills. So I thought about that at the beginning of the semester, and I thought, okay, what assignments will not only enable my students to develop those skills, but also enable me to give my students feedback on how they're doing on developing those skills all along the way throughout the semester, rather than just at a midterm paper when I give them feedback, or even worse, on a final paper when it's kind of too late for them to change anything. So I started breaking down my semester, my course schedule into different assignments. You see on the right here are all the digital dialogue assignments that I developed. So I thought really carefully, okay, here are the big skills. How can I break those big skills down into small things that they can do, again, that will give me an opportunity to give them feedback? So that was the first thing that I planned. That's how I thought about my semester. Okay, what will allow them to practice the skills that I want them to develop and give them feedback? Then when we get into digital dialogue, I would create these individual prompts that explain in a little bit more detail what exactly I'm asking them to do, what the skill is that I'm trying to get them to think about and practice. And in a sense, I'm setting them up for failure. I know that they're not going to do well on this particular assignment. It's the first time, for example, that I've asked them to write the first body paragraph of their paper, and I know that it's going to be bad. But I'd much rather have them fail there than on their midterm paper or on their final essay. So I create this prompt, and then they respond to it. It's great because before class, I can go in and I can read what they've written. I can see how well they've done at trying to do this thing, develop or practice a skill that I want them to practice. And so I can see it. Other students can see it. This is an open forum. And then one of the things that I can do is I can give them individual feedback. And this is my favorite feature of digital dialogue. I can give them audio-visual feedback. Rather than taking 10 to 15, sometimes even 20 minutes to write up a response where I'm really concerned with how grammatically correct my writing is. I want to word things just so, because I know students will be looking at me as a writing professor and judging the quality of my writing. I can just spit out in 2 minutes what would have otherwise taken me 20 minutes to write down. So I love that. The other thing, it allows me to give very specific feedback. It allows me to just kind of spit things out. Hopefully somewhere in that process, I've said something that sticks with them. It also allows other students to see what I've said to them, to one another. So in other words, the feedback that I give is amplified. Its target audience is not just the one student, but any student who cares to look. And I in fact encourage my students to hear what I say to their classmates, to look at someone's response and say, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what Professor Rowan has to say to this person, so they can learn in that way as well. It also allows me to alter my lesson plans. When I read these responses before class, I can look at them and I can say, you know what? I see a pattern here. My students just aren't getting this. Rather than going in blindly and saying, okay, I think this is maybe where I need to help them, I can know exactly where they're at, what they're doing, and what I need to do to help them. So on this particular day, for example, I noticed that in their responses to my prompt, they were continually misquoting the text that we were writing about. And so I pulled individual sentences from their passages, printed them off on a page, handed them out in class and said, okay, I want you to get in pairs and fix these. Do whatever you need to do to fix these. And then we came back together and talked about, again, what the right way to quote a text. Again, this was much more effective than just kind of randomly designing a class activity where I taught them about quoting techniques, because I knew exactly what they were doing wrong and then we discussed how to help them fix those problems. So that's great. So in other words, even if I weren't to respond to them by video, which sometimes I just can't afford to do, I don't have the time to do that, their input, their writing is still really valuable to my lesson planning. Here's another example of how I've used their post to lesson plan. This is that first paragraph, and I can go in and I can say, here's a really good example of what a first paragraph looks like. This is the kind of first paragraph that I want to see you writing. In my individual responses to them, I can say what they're doing wrong, and I can talk abstractly about what they need to do to fix it, but oftentimes it's still, again, a little bit vague or abstract. Here I can come in and I can say, let's look at this, let's see what this person is doing, go and do the same. It also is really effective, this kind of lesson planning, using their actual work as the course content during the class, because I ask my students to give feedback on what they see. I kind of step out of the feedback role and ask them to step into it, so they get experience and practice identifying, here's what's right about this, or here's what's wrong about this. They become the experts that are giving feedback, which allows them to think in really new ways about the skills that they're developing, allows them to gain confidence. In closing, I just really think that students love this kind of feedback. I found nothing but positive responses from students to Digital Dialogue. They claim that not only is the feedback much more specific and helpful, but it's also really personal. I think that they feel a kind of investment from me in them that they otherwise wouldn't feel, and they really value that. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Scott Hunt, and I'm the Managing Director